Welcome to the debate. There is a specific kind of social dread that arrives on Monday morning, and it isn't the work itself. It's the casual interrogation by a colleague, near the coffee machine who asks, "So, how was your weekend?"
Right, and for so many of us, the mind just goes blank. We scan our mental archives, realize we did nothing, quote, worthy of a headline, and we utter the most destructive sentence in the English language. It was fine.
It was fine. The tombstone of a life lived in neutral. It just ends the conversation. But the question we're wrestling with today is whether the remedy for that silence is a weekend of, rigid restorative order,
Or a chaotic, spontaneous adventure that leaves you exhausted, but crucially, with a story to tell.
It's Anna and Jake, who represent two diametrically opposed architectures of leisure. Anna represents the stay-at-home team, a philosophy of restoration, preparation, and what she calls future Anna.
And Jake is the avatar for the Let's Go team. He champions the social mode, the weekend domino effect, and the idea that being physically wiped is basically the price of admission for a life that actually involves, and I love this phrase, big feelings on a small hill.
I am the advocate. Today, I am arguing for the stay-at-home methodology. I contend that true leisure, requires a foundation of productivity. Without the structure of the soft Sunday, we're not relaxing, we are merely procrastinating stress.
And I am the dissenter. I will be arguing that the stay-at-home approach is, it's often just a euphemism for avoidance. The Let's Go methodology, specifically the willingness to embrace the chaos of a real-life group chat, is the only way to generate the nostalgia that makes human existence meaningful.
Okay, so let's begin by dismantling the stigma around the stay-at-home team. In the source material, Anna outlines a Saturday routine that is often dismissed as boring, but I find it intellectually exquisite. She describes a slow morning followed by adult mode, running errands, doing laundry, buying groceries.
All work, basically.
Well, the critique is usually that this is work, but look closer. Anna notes that by completing these chores in the afternoon, her evening becomes free. Not just empty, but psychologically free.
It's free from tasks, yes. But is it free for anything? I mean, this is where the Let's Go philosophy just completely diverges. Anna's freedom is a negative liberty. It's the absence of obligation. Jake's freedom is positive, the presence of experience. Look at how his Saturday starts. Just coffee. That's his entire plan. It's a vacuum waiting to be filled. He bumps into a friend, and that triggers the weekend domino effect. One friend becomes two, someone suggests leaving the city on a whim, and suddenly they're in a car. That momentum, where the brain just stands up and says, "Let's go," is a richness that a grocery list simply cannot provide.
See, I take issue with the word richness there. That momentum you describe is actually a surrender of agency. Jake admits that during this domino effect, nobody is checking their energy level and nobody is checking their wallet. They are just swept away. That isn't leisure, that is capitulation to peer pressure.
Contrast that with Anna's concept of cinema mode. She invites friends over, but the environment is strictly controlled. Blankets, popcorn, big lights off. It fosters intimacy without the chaos. She isn't isolating, she's curating. The transcript mentions they gave too many opinions to the screen. That is active engagement, but it happens within a sanctuary.
Sanctuary is a nice word for a bunker. You're prioritizing safety over texture. The material describes Jake's road trip, involving a persuasive cousin who convinces them to hit the road. They end up lost, turning onto a tiny road where they are literally judged by cows. Jake says, "Even the cows knew you did not plan this trip." That moment of absurdity, of being judged by livestock at a random farm, that's a texture of reality you cannot get inside an apartment. It is the friction of the world, and it leads to the small hill. They sit on a car hood, no phones, just "do you remember when" stories. That is nostalgia. You cannot schedule an epiphany, and you certainly won't find one while meal prepping.
But you're romanticizing the epiphany while ignoring the cost of the ticket. Jake explicitly states that by the time he got home, he was wiped. His brain was like a phone on 1%. And this brings us to the core of the stay-at-home philosophy, the soft Sunday.
Anna's Sunday involves waking up slowly and, crucially, a communal cleanup. Her friends didn't just leave. They straightened cushions and folded blankets. Then she engages in meal prep and irons clothes on hangers. She creates future Anna. This is a profound act of self-love. She ensures that when Monday arrives, she isn't recovering. She is ready.
Future Anna sounds like a very demanding manager. Present Jake is a poet. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that ironing clothes is a peak weekend experience. Jake's exhaustion being wiped is a badge of honor. It signifies that he used the battery. He didn't conserve it, he spent it on connection. Why do we treat energy like something to be hoarded? The weekend is the time to spend it.
Because if you spend it all, you enter the week in a deficit. Let's dig deeper into this spending of energy. I want to challenge the psychology of Jake's just coffee. In the source text, Jake admits that just coffee is deceptive. It's a trap. He ends up in a real-life group chat, which is a brilliant metaphor for chaos. Everyone talking at once, suggesting plans. This sounds...
It is exhausting.
Anna, on the other hand, uses the term low-key busy. She says there is a specific satisfaction in catching up on chores. It stabilizes the mind. The stay-at-home team isn't hiding. They are building a defensible, psychological position against the chaos of the world.
But low-key can easily slide into invisible. You call it stabilizing, I call it stagnating. The real-life group chat Jake describes, people talking over each other, music, photos, is high-bandwidth communication. It is messy, yes, but it's vital. The material mentions a specific moment during the road trip where they almost miss an exit because everyone is shouting directions. That friction is the memory. If the weekend is just a seamless transition from Friday to Monday with no navigational errors and no cows judging you, have you actually lived? Or have you just maintained the machinery of your life?
I think you are overlooking the very real consequences of that friction. We have a perfect control case in the material, the locked out incident. This is crucial to our debate. Jake attempts to adopt the stay-at-home methodology on Sunday. He tries to be responsible, and what happens? He goes to take out the trash and locks himself out of his apartment. Keys inside, phone inside, me outside. He stands there like a frozen statue. This proves my point. The let's go personality lacks the discipline for the stay-at-home life. He tried to mimic the structure but failed because he didn't respect the details.
That is a very harsh interpretation. Have you considered how he handled it? He didn't crumble. He says, the worst thing today already happened. He found calm within the disaster. He borrowed a phone, called a friend, and waited. It reinforces his philosophy. Make the most of it. He reframed the lockout not as a failure, but as just another part of the story. Meanwhile, Anna's Sunday ended with clothes ironed on hangers. Sure, it was seamless. But Jake's Sunday, despite the disaster, or perhaps because of it, gave him a narrative. He became the weekend poet in the shower that the introduction speaks about. Anna just became a prepared employee.
But consider the physiological toll. He was wiped from Saturday, then stressed on Sunday. He explicitly admits that Anna's way is kinder. He says, your way is kinder, kind to future you. He realized that by running errands on Saturday, Sunday Anna could breathe. Jake's Sunday self was suffocating under the pressure of his own lack of planning until he was forced into a reset by the lockout. The stay-at-home architecture allows for cinema mode and connection because the logistical threats have been neutralized. You cannot enjoy the small hill if you're worried about your laundry or your keys.
Actually, you can. That is the superpower of the Let's Go team. They compartmentalize. But I want to pivot to something very specific in the source material. We have to acknowledge the format here, don't we? This transcript comes from the English Leap podcast, which is specifically designed as a podcast with simple English to, well, attract views on YouTube. This meta-context changes how we should interpret their lifestyles. They are performing these identities for an audience of learners.
That is a critical observation, and I believe it actually bolsters the stay-at-home argument. Think about the needs of that audience. Learners need clarity. They need accessible structures. Anna's narrative offers clear, definable actions.
run errands, do laundry, meal prep, catch up on chores. These are the bricks and mortar of daily reality. For a podcast aimed at teaching simple English, Anna's Life offers high utility. It allows the listener to map the language directly onto their own domestic routines. It's grounded, repeatable, and, well, precise.
Utility is important, sure, but engagement is what drives views on YouTube. Precision is fine for a textbook, but the Let's Go narrative teaches nuance, emotion, and storytelling. Look at the vocabulary Jake introduces. Nostalgia, spontaneous, on a whim, persuasive, wiped. These are the words that hook an audience. I mean, if you want to attract views, you don't do it by explaining how to iron a shirt. You do it by telling a story about getting lost on a farm. Jake is demonstrating that language is a tool for connection, not just description.
I would argue that connection is a broad term. Anna connects through shared responsibility. Her friends helping straighten the room is a form of social intimacy that is often overlooked in favor of loud parties. But going back to the platform, YouTube, implies a visual component, or at least an engagement with a narrative. Anna's cinema mode, popcorn, blankets, dim lights, is a universally understood, cozy visual. It appeals to a desire for comfort. In the context of learning simple English, there's a safety in Anna's world that encourages the learner. It says, you can master this. Jake's world says, good luck surviving the chaos.
But surviving the chaos is the universal human experience. The source material notes that learners often feel like they are auditioning for the best weekend story. This is a profound insight. When you're learning a language, you want to be able to tell a story that makes people laugh or lean in. You don't win that audition by describing how you folded blankets. You win it by describing the feeling of the warm wind and the old songs from school days. The Let's Go life generates the vocabulary of magnetism. It teaches the listener how to be interesting, which is arguably the ultimate goal of fluency.
Being interesting is valuable, but being understood is essential. The material emphasizes a calm word tour at the end of the episode. It values low-key and make the most of it just as much as hit the road. The stay-at-home life is not devoid of story. It is a story of contentment. And contentment is harder to write, and perhaps it generates fewer views in a clickbait sense, but it models a sustainable relationship with the language and with life.
Contentment is often just a lack of conflict. But let's look at where these two philosophies converge in the text. The source material ends with a negotiation. Jake tries to be persuasive again. He asks Anna to come outside for a half day, just coffee and a short walk.
And notice the terms of that negotiation. He suggests she can return to her blanket life afterwards. He acknowledges that she needs that base. I view this compromise not as Anna needing liberation, but as Jake realizing he needs boundaries. He proposes 10% spontaneity. He knows that 100% Jake is unsustainable. It leads to being locked out in the cold. He needs a dose of Anna's structure to make his spontaneity viable. I see it completely differently. I view it as the stay-at-home team needing to touch grass. 10% spontaneity is enough to change the flavor of the weekend. If Anna stays inside her fortress of meal prep forever, she calcifies. Jake is offering her a lifeline. He says outside is your natural place, jokingly, but he's pushing her to expand. The debate settles on the phrase, make the most of it. For Jake, making the most of it means squeezing every drop of fun out, even if you crash.
Strategy. Jake bets it all on the whim and sometimes wins big with a small hill moment, but sometimes he loses his keys. Anna invests in future Anna and gets guaranteed returns of peace and readiness.
But guaranteed returns are boring. The source material asks listeners to decide if they are auditioning for the best weekend. Jake is always auditioning. He wants the story. Anna is opting out of the audition to actually live a sustainable life. But I argue that in the long run, the memories that stick, the nostalgia the source defines as warm feelings when old memories come back, those are exclusively the domain of the Let's Go team. You don't get nostalgia from a grocery run.
I would argue you get something better than nostalgia. You get sanity. You get the absence of that Sunday night dread. When Anna wakes up on Monday, she isn't wiped. She doesn't have a phone gallery of chaos to sort through. She has a clean room, a prepared meal, and a calm mind. That is a victory that doesn't need to be shouted over loud music.
It's a victory of safety. But let's look at the word tour. which effectively acts as the summary of their lives. We have low-key versus on a whim, catch up on versus hit the road. The source presents these as equal tools in the kit, but implicit in the English leap framing is that we need to be able to navigate both.
Precisely. The material suggests that even Jake, the avatar of chaos, had to learn the hard way, through the lockout, that low-key has value. He eventually did the ironing. He eventually did the meal prep. He capitulated to the stay-at-home logic because biology demands it. You cannot run on whim forever.
He didn't capitulate, he adapted. He realized that to survive as a let's-go person, he needs a minimum viable product of organization. But he didn't enjoy it. He did it so he could hit the road again next weekend. The goal remains the experience. The chores are just the tax he pays to get there.
And for Anna, the chores are the ritual. They are the leisure. That is the fundamental disconnect. She enjoys the adult mode. It validates her competence.
Competence is great, but I want big feelings. I want to be judged by cows.
We are nearing the end of our time, so let's summarize these positions. You, the dissenter, are arguing that the let's go methodology, represented by Jake, is the superior architecture for leisure because it prioritizes serendipity and narrative.
Exactly. While the stay-at-home life is safe and protects future Anna, the let's go life creates the nostalgia that defines who we are. The goal of a weekend shouldn't just be to survive until Monday, it should be to create a story that goes beyond, it was fine. The risk of being wiped or getting locked out is worth the reward of the small hill.
And I maintain that without the foundation of future Anna, the ironing of the clothes, the meal prep, the low-key restoration, the spontaneity of the let's go team inevitably leads to burnout. Anna's method is not about being boring. It is about securing the peace of mind required to actually enjoy life. The stay-at-home approach turns the home into a sanctuary rather than a pit stop.
The source material leaves us with a beautiful image, the audition. We are all secretly auditioning for the best weekend story when our colleagues ask us on Monday.
And perhaps the true skill, as the English Leap podcast suggests, is finding the vocabulary, the word tour, to describe whichever reality we choose, whether it is the chaotic road trip or the cozy blanket fort. The ability to articulate it makes it real.
So, as you head into your next week, and I ask yourself, are you auditioning for a story or are you recovering for the week?
And remember, whether you are ironing your clothes or getting lost on a farm, make the most of it.
That's it for the debate.
Thank you for listening.